boy, me and this watch have just been through quite a journey together. I need to tell you all about it. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dave from Chase the Summit, and this is my Garmin Forerunner 965. Admittedly, I've owned this watch for a pretty long time now, but just 1 week ago, I ran a 100-mile ultramarathon with this watch. That ultramarathon took me 27 hours and 15 minutes in a continuous activity, and no, I did not have to charge this watch, not even one time. In fact, it's been a week since that ultramarathon. It's been like 4 or 5 days since I ran it, and I still haven't charged the watch, and we still have 10% left on the battery of this 965. I'm making this video for two reasons, because first of all, I wanted to dispel the myth that you can't run an ultramarathon with a watch with an AMOLED display. It seems like a lot of people think that you need the MIP or the transflective display to run an ultramarathon or do a thru hike or something like that. You can do it with an AMOLED display, you just have to have the right settings, and that leads me into part 2 of why I'm making this video, because I want to show you what settings I used in order to achieve this with the Garmin Forerunner 965. So like I said, I ran a 100-mile ultramarathon with this watch a week ago. That race was called the Vermont 100-mile Endurance Race. And if you want to learn all about that race and how it went for me, check out the full documentary video that I have on this very channel that I'll link up here or somewhere down below. To set a stage for this, let's talk about my particular use case while recording this activity at this race. So I was using GPS recording the entire time. I was recording my position and my heart rate from the optical heart rate sensor on the back of the watch. I did not have any paired accessories like an external heart rate sensor or anything like that, and I was using navigation the entire time. I had a full course loaded up on the watch of the entire 100-mile distance, so I knew whether or not I took a wrong turn. Now for the settings. Let's talk about the settings I used, and to do that, I'm going to dive into the trail running activity here. I'm going to hold the center button here to get into the settings, and then I'm going to click the start button here to dive through all of the settings. Now, you may not care about this stuff, but I'm just going to go through everything so you have all the information and the settings I used. First of all is going to be data screens. Now, I'm not sure if this matters in terms of battery life, but these are the data screens I used. This is my main data screen. So I've got my elapsed time at the top, I've got my distance, I've got my average pace there, and then I've got distance to next. Now, distance to next is a really awesome data field because it actually tells you how far you are from the next waypoint in your navigation. And for me, that means how far I am to the next aid station. If you're unfamiliar with ultra marathons, there's typically a bunch of aid stations along the route so you can refill your water and get food and all of that stuff while you're out there so you can kind of resupply on the move to get the most efficient use of time. So having this data field showing me how far I am from the next one is just really useful and a great motivator to keep moving. Now keep in mind that distance to next data field only works if you've loaded a route that has waypoints on board. Otherwise, there'll just be like a couple of dashes there telling you no information because it doesn't have anything to base it on. Next to that, I do have my battery level on the right here because I do tend to carry a charging cable for my watch in the event I do need to charge it on the go. Again, I didn't have to do that at this event, but I do carry it just in case. And then at the bottom here, I do keep a heart rate gauge, and that's pretty critical because at a long event like this, I'd like to keep my heart rate in a lower zone so I don't fatigue myself during the later stages of the race. So that's data page number 1. Let's scroll down and dive into data page number 2. Here I've got my time of day and my instant pace, my real-time pace, which I find pretty useful. Scrolling down again, we get a map view of my activity, and this will show me both where I am and where I'm going with a purple line indicating the route that I have loaded in the navigation. So those are the data screens I use. You may have more or less than me. Some people have like 10 data pages. I like to go with the mindset less is more, or keep it simple, stupid, whatever you prefer there. Scrolling down again to all the other settings that may or may not matter when it comes to battery life. I was recording running power the entire time. I don't know if that affects battery life or not. I do use 3D speed and 3D distance because this is a very hilly course. My broadcast heart rate setting was toggled off because again, I wasn't using an external accessory for this and I didn't need to broadcast to any other devices. And then for satellites, I used GPS only. This is gonna be critical for battery life. If you do enable the more accurate all systems or multi-band mode on your watch, that will take a huge impact on battery life. And personally, for me, at a 100-mile long event, getting the most accuracy is not a priority. The priority is to have my watch last to the end of the event. And to be honest, GPS only is actually still very accurate on the Garmin Forerunner 965. I have no complaints, and even I've compared tracks side by side, and even in GPS only mode, it's still getting pretty solid results. Scrolling down one more time, I do leave the touchscreen off. Again, I don't know if it affects battery life, but for me, in these activities, I don't want to mistakenly swipe the screen, so I just leave it off entirely. Another setting that I have enabled is recording the temperature. This will record the ambient temperature around the watch, which is not super accurate, but I leave it on and it doesn't seem to affect battery life. I also leave record VO2 max on. Again, I don't know if it matters with battery life, but it's on. And that's really it when it comes to the settings in the trail run activity. Now, if I jump into my system settings here, there are other settings that will take a toll on battery life. And the one that makes the most difference here is going to be the display settings. So let's dive into that. So within the display settings, you've got two options. General use, that's like in everyday use when you're just using it as a smartwatch. And then you've got during activity, when you're actually out on a run or a ride. So if we dive into that, you can see I've got always on display turned off because I don't really need it. Like the gesture thing works just fine and it conserves battery life not having the display lit up when you're not looking at it. And if I scroll down to brightness here and dive into that, I have the brightness set to the lowest setting, which is 1/3. There's 3 different sections here. You can do low, medium, high basically. I leave it on low all the way down because again, these displays are so bright and vibrant that even on a sunny day, even when I was running on the top of a hill in exposed sunlight, I had no issues reading my watch at all. Sometimes, yeah, you have to like angle your wrist a certain way to see the display, to put it in a shadow the right way, but it's really not a big deal. Scrolling down further, I have red shift off, I have gesture on. You could actually turn this off and save even more battery life by manually pressing the light button to view the display, but I find I don't want to deal with that out in an activity, so I leave gesture on, and when I raise my wrist, I can see what's going on. Scrolling down one more time, we have timeout. And again, this is how long it takes the display to turn off once it illuminates when you raise your wrist. I have it set to 8 seconds, so that's right in the middle. You can actually go down to 4 seconds if you want to conserve even more battery life, but I find 8 seconds is the best option for me because it gives me time to see everything on the screen. Quick interruption, check out that watch stand. I just noticed how pale I am under there. Now that we've talked about all the settings, I apologize that got a little bit dense. Let's talk about the actual performance of this watch at that race. Like I said, this event was 100 miles long and took me 27 hours and 15 minutes. And when I started the race, of course, I had a fully charged battery. It was at 100%. And keep in mind, this watch is over a year old now, so it's not a brand new fresh battery. This watch has seen a lot of abuse over time and probably has some form of battery degradation. Now, when I crossed the finish line and hit stop on my watch, I looked down and I was surprised to see 45% left on my battery. I had almost half the battery remaining after running for 27 hours and 15 minutes. Now, if we dive a little bit deeper and analyze the actual fit file recorded during this activity, you can see that about 2% of battery was burned per hour, which is really impressive. That means this watch has an estimated battery life with these particular settings at nearly 50 hours in duration, which is a really, really long time. I don't know about you, but I was pretty shocked to see this, and honestly, when I started this race, I was very ready to dig out my charging cable from my backpack and plug it in because I thought I'd need to charge it at some point in the race, but it turns out you can get through a full ultramarathon and more, and that kind of dismisses the whole myth of AMOLED watches and Garmin's at large that they don't have battery life for these kinds of activities, because I assure you they do. So that's really it for this video. I just want to make a short video sort of explain the settings and my experience with the Garmin Forerunner 965 at this particular event. And now I want to hear from you in the comments down below. Have you run an ultramarathon with the Garmin Forerunner 965 or any other model out there? Share your experience with battery life and performance in the comments of this video down below, because I would love to hear from you. And also, if you have a tweak with your settings or a magic thing that you do with your watch to kind of get the most out of it, share that as well. All right, friends, if you made it to this point of the video, you probably liked this video. And if you did like this video, I would really appreciate it if you went down and gave me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel down below so you don't miss more videos from me in the future. And while you're down there, check out the other links in the description down below over to my other social media accounts like my Instagram, my Threads, my Strava, all those things. And of course, my podcast that I try to do on a semi-weekly basis where I talk all about these things. And finally, make sure to check out ChaseTheSummit.com where you can buy a sweet hat like this, because it does support the channel and these hats are actually They're actually quite nice. And that's really it for this one. I'm gonna get back to recovery and hanging out on the couch for a while before I'm able to run again. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.